The New Jersey Jackals of the Canadian American League are getting ready to open up the 2015 season and attempt to make another run towards the Canadian American League Championship Series. I had the opportunity to go one-on-one with the media director and play-by-play announcer of the Jackals, Michael Cohen, on my show, SMC Sports, to get a glimpse on what he expects from the 2015 New Jersey Jackals, as well as what he expects from teams around the league. Take me back to last year, because I am going into my sophomore year at Montclair State University, which means I wasn't around last year for the Jackals season. Take me back to last year's CanAm Championship Series. Jackals about to go 3-0. You know, they made a lot of errors in those last games, a lot of mistakes. What happened to the Jackals that cost them the series?
Well, that was a very frustrating series, that entire series, because they're up 2-0. They had won two very close games, both by identical scores of 3-2. Joe Donegan, who was their lead home run hitter that year and set the franchise record for home runs, was really the difference in the first two games. He had a couple of big hits in Game 1. He had a terrific catch that everyone remembers, that was all over YouTube, that was all over News 12.
I believe it was on SportsCenter as well.
Yeah, where he makes that back-flipping catch, fantastic catch to save the game. It was the final out of the game, in fact, in Game 2. They go up 2-0. They had the lead. I think the score was, I'm just going by muscle memory, 4-3 going into the ninth. All they need to do is get 3 outs, and they're up 3-0. What happens? There's an error. There's a couple of errors, and then there are a couple of walks, and then before you know it, the closer, who was very good all year, has a wild pitch, brings in a winning run. Boulders win Game 3. 5-4, you're thinking to yourself, okay, fine, Boulders are going to win the game, they're due, whatever. You blow a game, you move on. That's just baseball.
Speaking of Joe Donegan, I wanted to get to this a little bit later in the interview, but you brought him up. Joe Donegan now somewhere else, like you said, leading home run guy for the Jackals, and I believe in the CanAm as well. And he was third in RBIs last year's regular season. How do you think the Jackals lineup is going to benefit without his power in the lineup? What do you think they're going to need to do to benefit for his loss?
Well, I think they're going to have to hit more consistently. I mean, one thing that there was a problem for the team last year overall was that they struck out a lot. I don't have the exact number in front of me. In fact, I'm going to bring up the CanAm League site in front of me to get you the exact stat. But They really struggled with strikeouts. They struggled at times with men on base last year. So the plan that Joe Capopietro told me would be that they're going to bring in a team, bring in players that are going to hit the ball a little more consistently than they did last season. So that's the thought. So they bring in a bunch of guys like Matt Helms, who was the 300 hitter for Quebec last year, Anthony Gomez, who was a Don Bosco. They bring in Mark Threlkeld, Matt Wessinger, Justin Trapp. They bring in a lot of guys who have also connections to the Kansas City Royals farm system and who have been pretty decent hitters in their career. I wouldn't say big-time hitters, otherwise they would still be with their affiliate, but guys who've had pretty good careers, and the hope is that they'll hit more consistently, with men on base, singles, doubles, a lot of those, stealing bases, and that's going to be the plan this year, I think, on the outside.
Speaking of the Kansas City Royals, there's one new pitcher on the Jackals who has experience playing for them. His name is Donnie Joseph. What do you think his experience with the Royals is going to bring to this Jackals locker room? Do you think it's going to bring a little veteran experience, even though he didn't play that much? What kind of leadership or experience, what do you think it's going to bring to this Jackals team?
Well, I think it depends on what kind of leadership role he wants to take, really. Ultimately, that's up to him. He's coming into a very unique situation, just recently released by the Royals. So for a lot of those guys, it's kind of when you get released by a team, you're trying to get back to affiliate, and there's that motivation. So we'll see. I'm very interested to see what kind of role he does take as leadership. I think that's one thing that's a question that myself and my fellow broadcasters are asking as well.
Yeah, and I have both rosters in front of me, one from last year and one from this year. And on both of them, I said for 2014, I would highlight yellow for players who are gone. 2015, highlight yellow for players who are new, and there is a lot of yellow in both of that. It just looks like a completely different team. But one player who is still here, and I remember Brian Gallsworth got an exclusive interview with him, is Isaac Pavlik. Do you think of him as one of, if not the leader of the New Jersey Jackals locker room? He's been there the longest. What do you think his role is?
Yeah, he is the leader of the clubhouse. He's been there. This will now be his 11th season with the franchise. He, too, is a guy who has had experience on affiliates, not necessarily at the major league level, but with Colorado and Chicago in their farm systems. He's been there. He's been through the ropes. He knows what it's like to play in this level, to play in this league. The fact that he's still here, to have that face, to have that familiar face in the clubhouse, it not only helps us from the media standpoint because then we can, have that guy who knows other players. It can kind of break them in easier for us, but it also helps the manager. It helps the coaches because there's that veteran presence. You have to have that voice in the clubhouse who can say, hey, guys, I know we're on a losing streak. I know we've lost a couple in a row, but guess what? I'm on the hill. This is my game. Give me the ball. We're going to fix this from that standpoint, from the pitching standpoint. And then from the clubhouse standpoint, Isaac's a guy who's very, very even-keeled. He's very loose. He's fun to be around. And I think that also helps guys in the clubhouse during the dog days of summer. So he is invaluable. He's huge to this ball club throughout this season and, of course, previous seasons.
No question. I remember I listened to the interview that Brian did a few weeks ago. Fantastic interview with both Isaac and Ryan Fennell. Two returners that are coming back to the Jackals this year. But looking back at the rest of the lineup, there's maybe I really don't have the numbers in front of me. 3, maybe 4 returners this year. Everybody else is new. There are some players coming out of college, some players coming from other organizations. Take a look at the Jackals team from last year and then compare it to this year. What do you think the biggest difference is, and do you think they can be as successful as last season?
Well, I think the biggest difference from last season to this season, just looking on the roster, comparing them, is one. I would say the power standpoint is huge. The fact that Joe Donegan isn't in the roster is pretty obvious. I mean, when you look at the roster, you compare it last year to this year. You say, well, where's Donegan? Well, he's no longer here. So I think that's obvious, and you're sitting yourself saying, well, who's going to be our power guy? And that's the kind of question the Jackals asked last year. When they brought in a new roster, they didn't have Nick Giroputo, didn't have Brian Sabatella or Jose Cuevas in the line. The thought was, well, who was going to step up and be that power guy? Who was going to take pressure off of Jeremy Barnes from being the guy in the lineup? That was the big question at the time. So we'll see. I think that's the big question coming into this team.
And, Michael, before I let you go, just tell our listeners, where can we listen to Jackals baseball this season?
You can listen to the Jackals on jackals.com under our Listen Live portal. We have it with stretchinternet.com. We use Stretch Internet for the radio. We also use a new partner in our TV coverage. We're now partnered with CanAm, with Hyper Technology, which is up in Canada. And they started a website called CanAmLeague.tv. That's where the games are. So if you want to listen to us during home games, they'll be on CanAmLeague.tv. For the radio, especially when we're on the road, it's portal.stretchinternet.com/Jackals for the radio. So that's where we'll be.
Michael, thank you so much for calling in. I really appreciate it. The New Jersey Jackals will open up the season on the road Monday, May 25th. Be sure to check out the Jackals all season long at Yogi Berra Stadium, right here on the campus of Montclair State University. Also be sure to follow WMSC Sports, as we will provide recaps and interviews for the Jackals all summer long. I'm Sean McChesney for WMSC Sports. On the field, on the court, on the ice, we got you covered. Stay tuned for more.